Margaret Sanger. She was a eugenist who was hailed last month by our own Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton.
I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. I am really in awe of her.
Okay. Not only did Hillary Clinton say that, listen how she compared Sanger to one of our founding fathers last week.
I admire Thomas Jefferson. I admire his words and his leadership, and I deplore his unrepentant slaveholding. I admire Margaret Sanger, being a pioneer in trying to empower women to have some control over their bodies, and I deplore statements that you have referenced. That is the way we often are when we look at flawed human beings. There are things that we admire and things we deplore.
Angela Franks is the author of Margaret Sanger's Eugenic Legacy, the Control of Female Fertility. You know, Angela, Thomas Jefferson was a man in great conflict. He is not one of my favorite founding fathers because he was divided in himself. He was in great turmoil within himself. Was Margaret Sanger in that kind of turmoil? It seems to me that she was pretty much consistent.
That's correct. Jefferson, you can argue, Jefferson didn't devote his life towards promoting slavery. Margaret Sanger did devote her life to promoting eugenics, and so the analogy is not very appropriate.
Okay, eugenics, by the way, is what ended up as the Holocaust. It was making the perfect race. It was getting rid of people. In fact, the progressives in the 1900s, they went into prisons and they wanted to I think it was in Indiana, where they were getting rid of some of the prison population, because if we can off them, then they won't reproduce, and then we'll have the master race. We also have Margaret Sanger. Can we put the picture of Margaret Sanger up here? This is Margaret Sanger at a Klan rally, which a lot of the early progressives were Klan members. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was one of the most racist men to ever be in the White House, and he's a progressive hero. Did all of these things, did she ever disavow them? Did she ever walk away and say, well, you know, that whole Holocaust thing, that was a mistake?
Well, I think you can argue that Sanger herself didn't hold anti-Semitic attitudes. Her first husband was Jewish, for example. But she promoted a thought world. She promoted an ideology that leads to things like the Holocaust. She divided the world up into the fit and the unfit.
Right. Wasn't Planned Parenthood part of the idea was to get rid of some of the poor babies, get rid of some of the black babies?
The poor have always been the target of eugenicists, from Sanger to Hitler to everybody.
But not African Americans.
Well, Sanger herself didn't say that blacks per se were unfit, but what you see is you can have a racist effect even if you don't have a racist intent, and that's what you see with somebody like Sanger. So she's promoting, implying that if you're poor, you're unfit and that you need to use birth control, and she's saying that the problems of the world are caused by poor people having babies. Okay. And this kind of attitude ends up affecting people like racial minorities, people who are impoverished and disadvantaged.
Okay, I want to play something here from a YouTube debate with Hillary Clinton. This is really important. Remember, Margaret Sanger is a progressive. This is a terrifying, when you learn who progressives are, these were a terrifying group of people that ran our country, and I contend are still running our country. Here's what she said in the YouTube debate when asked, are you a liberal? Watch this.
I prefer the word progressive, which has a real American meaning, going back to the progressive era at the beginning of the 20th century. I consider myself a modern progressive, someone who believes strongly in individual rights and freedoms, who believes that we are better as a society when we're working together.
You know, Angela, I don't know how much you know about progressives, but that doesn't sound like the real American early 20th century progressive that believes in individual rights. That's not what the progressive movement is at all. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the whole idea behind eugenics is it's better for society if you don't reproduce.
Exactly. So Sanger can say that she's the fit, quote unquote, but all these other people out there are the unfit. And so, yes, you're right that progressives were by and large eugenicists. They did believe that if they could keep certain segments of the population from reproducing, that all of the world's problems would disappear. And so that's why this attitude shaded very easily into population control.
Does it bother
you? They would
you?
Say quality, not quantity.
Does it bother you at all that the global warming movement is also all about the progressive movement? That is a progressive movement, and that too is about population control. That too is about if we just didn't have so many humans on the planet. Where over in Europe there are people. I mean, I've read several interviews with people who are saying, you know what, we're just not going to have any children, and everybody should just only have one child, etc., etc. That is the same thing. It's just not the state coming in and killing your child.
It's very dangerous. There's this strong attitude that people are the world's problem. And so it's a very anti-humanist sort of attitude that you see in the population control movement. And you're absolutely right that it's become closely connected to environmentalism.
Okay.
So I think it's a great concern.